So, in my most recent video, I talked about how out of the last 12 months, I have spent 6 of those months on the continent of Africa, um, starting in Morocco. I went to Tanzania, I went to Kenya, came back to the US, went to Ghana, went back to Kenya. And I was talking about how much I miss it and how, I'm excited to go back and how my perspective has shifted and all of these things. And someone left a comment on that video that really, really made me sad, disheartened me, made me frustrated, maybe a little bit angry, but mostly sad. So I'm going to share the comment right there. And she's saying that she wants to go to South Africa, but she's wondering if Africans like African Americans because she keeps seeing videos about how Africans don't like African Americans, and she wants to know if they're going to be nice to us. Deep, heavy sigh. So this made me sad for a lot of reasons, because there has for a long time been this idea that Africans don't like African Americans, African Americans don't like Africans. Anyone who is from the continent, who lives outside of the continent, this idea that those people look down on African Americans or judge African Americans. I've even heard stories of people from the continent, whether Nigerian, Ghanaian, Kenyan, whatever, whose parents have told them don't date or marry an African American because African Americans are lazy and we're violent and we're this, that, and the third. And this is so frustrating to me. One, because I've traveled to the continent of Africa several times. I've been to multiple African countries. I never have an experience that leaves me thinking Africans don't like us. But that is an ongoing thought that a lot of people have. It's an ongoing thought that a lot of people have. I want to talk about this. I want to share this. So I don't know if you guys know about the Berlin Conference. The Berlin Conference took place in 1884. The Berlin Conference involved 14 European nations, 14 European powers, and the United States. So basically 15 Western powers that took it upon themselves to carve up the entire continent of Africa into the countries, the territories, the countries that we know today. There was not a single African representative in the room. There was not a single representative from any area of Africa in the room, from any nation in Africa in the room. These European powers and the United States wanted to carve up the continent so that they could extract resources, so that they could have the land for themselves, because they knew and continue to know that Africa is rich in natural resources. And in order to control those natural resources, and in order to have that land for themselves, for their own colonial desires, imperialistic desires, they decided to get together and carve up the continent and draw these lines that have created these nations. That was the Berlin Conference. The Berlin Conference also made way for the tyrant, who is King Leopold, to take control of what is now the Congo, a huge piece of land in the center of Africa. And if you don't know about King Leopold, he was a despicable person. I'm going to go ahead and say that. I'm talking about chopping off hands, putting children in mines, all of these kinds of things, and control, and even more disgusting things. Look him up, King Leopold. But controlling the land for himself and for his own selfish gain, and perhaps also the gain of Belgium, which is where he came from. And so what bothers me about this commentary around Africans not liking African Americans and all of this rhetoric and all of this propaganda about being lazy and being violent and all of these things is that this propaganda feeds into or rather upholds the idea that these colonial powers are better than, that the imperialistic powers are better than the continent that they have taken control of. When they carved up the continent, when they drew these imaginary lines, these lines were were drawn between entire tribes, entire kingdoms, separating people who speak the same language, separating people in the same village. You know what I'm saying? You have Kenya and Tanzania, you have Rwanda and Burundi, you have all of these nations that are neighboring nations, Ghana and Togo, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire. You have all of these nations that are neighboring nations where people have entire kingdoms, entire villages, entire um, uh, cultural connections, connections by language, connections by tradition. And now all of those things that have been established by the people who live there have now been carved up by European and American powers for the sake of their own gain, for the sake of the wealth of those nations. And if you look at a lot of these European nations, they are still thriving because of the natural resources that they have extracted and continue to extract from African nations. So this idea that this group of Black people is lazy, this group of Black people is dirty, this group of Black people are, they're not smart, they're not intelligent, this group of Black people is violent. This all comes from these European powers pumping out propaganda. And all that does is separate. That's all it does is separate. That's all it does is separate. It separates us from one another. We know that the Berlin Conference separated entire nations, entire kingdoms, entire villages of people. We know that the transatlantic slave trade snatched millions and millions and millions of people from the continent and shipped them across the water to South America, to the Caribbean, to North America. We also know about the East African slave trade that took people to India and to the Middle East. So knowing the history, even a little piece of the history of the continent of Africa, and knowing how it has been carved up, knowing how it has been just completely used for the gain of European powers, of Western powers, it grinds my gears a little bit that so many people of the African diaspora are willing to join in on that game, join in on that mentality, that colonial, imperialistic, white supremacist mentality. And I've heard people say, oh, well, I have heard myself, people of the African diaspora speak down on other people of the African diaspora. And my question is, what do you gain by doing that? What do you gain by saying that the people in your neighboring African nation are worse than you, are not as smart as you, are not as clean as you, are not as kind as you, are not as whatever as you? What do you gain? What do you gain by being an African American looking down on anyone on the continent of Africa, which is, a person who more likely than not lives in a place that could be your ancestral home? What do you gain by that? What do you gain by that? The only thing to gain by that is division. And when you join in on the divisive talk, when you join in on the divisive rhetoric, don't you see that you're kind of helping out the colonizer? Don't you see that your mind has been colonized by the very people who carved up the continent? Don't you see that? You have to see that. And this is why I don't get caught up in the diaspora wars. And I know a lot of times it's fun and games and people talking about, who has the best jollof and whatever. Okay, that's cool. But when we get into divisive comments, when we get into we're better than them, they're not as good as us, they're violent, they're dirty, they're not smart, they're whatever it is, when we join in on that, we are joining in on the colonial, imperialistic, white supremacist mentality that has carved up Africa for centuries, that has kept Africa poor for centuries. And when I say kept Africa poor, it doesn't even really make sense because Africa is not poor. It is the most rich in natural resources of any place on the earth. It is the most rich. But the people who live on the land in many of these countries do not get to benefit from the richness that's in their own soil because European powers have decided to come and extract it for their own benefit. There are a lot of nations, and I'm not just talking about on the continent, but I'm talking about in the Caribbean as well, South America as well, that are full of the diaspora, that are full of African descendant people that struggle because they have to pay taxes, ridiculous taxes, and keep the majority of their money in these European systems. These European systems have come to the continent and stolen artifacts, stolen riches, stolen wealth, stolen it. Not just people, but stuff coming out of the ground, gold and uranium, and all of these things that the world literally needs to run. All of our electrical devices run on these natural resources that are on the continent of Africa. And so many African nations and Caribbean nations are still struggling to gain their own wealth. Even though they have fought for their independence, they're still struggling to gain their own wealth because these European nations still control a bulk of the wealth. If we could talk about cocoa, Belgium chocolate. Cocoa doesn't grow there. Cocoa grows on the continent. But there are so many things in place to keep Ghana and other places that grow cocoa from benefiting from the wealth of chocolate and cocoa-based products. They have to export it for it to be processed and then import it. All of these fees, all of these taxes, all of these things. So many African nations, so many Caribbean nations are still fighting for their own wealth because their wealth is held in European banks, because they're forced to pay taxes and tariffs to all of these Western nations. And so when I see a comment like this, it makes me sad because what it tells me is that there are people of the African diaspora who are upholding these colonial mentalities, these colonial mindsets, these imperialistic mentalities and mindsets that really do nothing but pit us against one another. They do nothing but pit us against one another. It makes me so happy to see African nations rising, Burkina Faso, like all of the nations that are taking themselves back and pushing out imperialistic powers as much as they can and taking back their wealth and saying, no, the wealth is coming from our land, so our people should benefit from it. You don't get to take the majority of it and use it to your own gain. It's on our land. It's in our land. So our people who live on this land should be able to benefit from the wealth in this land. It makes me so happy to see that. But it makes me sad to see people participating in the very mentalities that have separated us for literal centuries. So, and this is why I tell people, I'm like, you have to go for yourself. You have to take off your Western brain. And as an American, you have to take off your American brain. If you are from some other European nation or from the UK, you have to take off your Western brain and you have to go and see for yourself. Don't allow anyone to keep you believing that it's all poor, that everybody's destitute, that everybody's hungry, and that people don't like you. Because this is the kind of propaganda that has kept people from connecting for so long. I remember when I was a kid and I would see these commercials for like Feed the Children. And we never saw Africa and its wealth. We always saw Africa and poverty. We saw children with, swollen bellies, crying because they didn't have food. And we were told how little money a day it takes to feed a child in Africa. We weren't shown African wealth. We weren't shown kings and kingdoms and the gold, all of the gold in Ghana and the fabric. And we weren't shown these things. And so it was not until I went for myself that I was like, wait a minute. Something is not right about the story that has been told to us for so long. If you in your mind think they're not nice to us, they don't like us, they're uneducated, they're this, whatever it is that you think, ask yourself where that idea came from. And I would encourage you to go and see for yourself, have the experience for yourself. Because truth be told, as an African American, when you step foot on the continent for the first time, you feel a connection. You feel a soul level connection. And I'm sure I've talked about this before. You feel a soul level connection. It may be 400 years between now and the time your last ancestor was there, but you feel the connection. You feel it. I have felt it in Ghana. I have felt it in Kenya. I have felt it in Zambia. I have felt it. I have felt it. And that is, you're able to relax. You're able to breathe. You're able to exhale. You're able to recognize similarities in a culture that you don't know, in a language that you don't know, but in people who look just like you. So for anyone out there who is peddling the nonsense of they don't like us, I want to ask you where you got that from. And listen, you may have had a bad experience, but guess what? There are jerks all over the world. I've had bad experiences in Europe. I've had bad experiences in the US, in Canada. And you can have a bad experience anywhere. You can meet a jerk anywhere. But you know what you'll also meet? You'll also meet people who will welcome you. You will meet people who will call you brother, sister. You will meet people who will say, welcome home. That's what you will meet. You will meet people who will say Akwaba. You will meet people who will say Karibusana. You will meet people who will welcome you. And so if you are a person who's peddling these ideas of they don't like us, or they're not as smart as we are, or everybody's poor, or whatever it is, ask yourself where you got that idea from. Because I guarantee you 9.99999 times out of 10, that is some propaganda that has been pushed by an imperialistic colonial mentality. But when you get to the continent, you will feel love. You will feel welcomed, and you will discover a place that you want to learn more about, that you want to see more of. You will meet people who remind you of your family members. So all of this diaspora war foolishness, just stop it. We are living in a time where division is the goal by superpowers. There are powers that walk this earth, and their only goal is to be divisive, to pit people against one another. Brother against brother, nation against nation. Don't be part of that. Don't be part of it. Don't be part of it. Do some due diligence and do a little bit of research for yourself. Learn about the Berlin Conference. Learn about King Leopold. Learn about the transatlantic slave trade. Learn about the East African slave trade. Learn how the diaspora was scattered throughout the world. Learn about those things. And it gives you some understanding, it gives you some empathy, but it also gives you information so that you're not out here just saying, oh, they don't like us. They're not nice to us. They're not welcoming to us. They hate us. Come on, y'all. Learn something. Learn something for yourself. So to the sister who put that comment on my page, I'm going to make sure she sees this video. I'm going to share the link with her. Go. You will be welcomed. And if you have a bad experience, don't chalk that up to the whole continent. Don't even chalk it up to the whole country. You had a bad experience with somebody who might be a jerk. That's not everybody. That's not the whole country. Whatever country you go to, that's not the whole country. And it's most certainly not the entire continent of Africa. It most certainly is not. I guarantee, I promise you, you will feel so loved, you will feel so welcomed, and you probably won't want to come back. Okay? And if you do come back, you'll probably definitely want to go back. Okay? Don't be a part of the divisive agenda. Just refuse. Just refuse to be a part of it. If you're not following me yet, please go ahead and subscribe. I have said this before, but my goal is to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you're watching this video and you liked it, subscribe. If you're watching this video and you hated it, subscribe. It's okay. Share with a friend. If you don't know me by now, my name is Tryphena Wade. I am a professional actor, Broadway, TV, and film. I am a certified master life coach. I'm also a globe trotter. And I don't get involved in the diaspora wars. I don't like the division of it all. I don't like the propaganda of it all. And I invite you to do a little research, have an open mind, and see for yourself. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll talk to you later. Peace.